Tony from the CloudCard Dev Team, and today we're going to talk about persistent access tokens. Fair warning, this talk will get a little bit technical, but I think this is important information for any card office or security manager to be aware of, or at least familiar with. So I'll try to keep it down to earth, but don't worry, there should be value in here for everybody. All right. So what is a persistent access token? This is a new feature that just came out, and a persistent access token is a long string of letters and numbers that's randomized that is used to authenticate a user with our application. Okay. Now, this is contrasted with session tokens, right? So we've had session tokens forever. You'll also hear us sometimes refer to them as authentication tokens, or just simply auth tokens, because that's what they're called in our underlying development framework. But a session token is what we've always had. It's what is used to communicate between the app, what you guys see, and the API. The auth token or the session token gets passed in order to request information about photos and people and et cetera, everything. And that is the primary way that either that API integrations and the application will request information from the application. A session token can be used an unlimited number of times, and it will, by default, it has a time to live of 12 hours. Okay, so it doesn't live very long. Now, with that said, when you sign out of the application, the session token that you're using will be destroyed immediately, so it won't always live 12 hours, but it shouldn't live any longer than 12 hours. Now, we have been in the past used session tokens that live longer than that for our integrations, and that's what we're currently replacing with persistent access tokens. So the persistent access token is a token that you can configure with an integration like the downloader or the importer, or more commonly, the most common way that we will see these used is with email links in the emails that go out to your customers, assuming, or with SSO if you're using SSO. So the only thing you can use a persistent access token for is to get a session token, right? So it authenticates you with the application, which responds with a session token, and then that session token has to be used to do all the things that we've always done with session tokens. The nice thing about persistent access tokens is they are configurable. You can configure a certain number of times that they can be used, from 1 all the way up to unlimited, and you can configure how long you want them to live. Okay, that both of those things are requests that we've had from various customers, and so we'll talk through some of those and how they'll work and impact. But let's go to this massively oversimplified diagram to show the primary ways that some of the main consumers of persistent access tokens will use them. So we have SSO and email, right? And by this I'm talking about an email link, essentially. Those will take their persistent access token in the form of a link, right, and pass it to the application, right? And then the application passes that persistent access token to the API and gets its session token and then talks back and forth. Okay, that way we're no longer passing session tokens out here or sending them via email, etc. We're going to talk down about the bottom section of this in a minute, okay? But let's just talk about the login links, right? Because login links are, as I said, this top part of the application or of the diagram uses login links, okay? We'll talk about email first, okay, and how that works, and then we'll talk very briefly about SSO and some of the benefits there, and do a couple quick examples. So let's jump over here to the application real quick. And first, I need to create a persistent access token. We're going to talk a little bit more about this process in a minute, but let me just pull up an account here, and I'll scroll down. You'll see there's a new section of the application down here called persistent access tokens, and you can create one there. Oh, create one there. Got to give it a name, so I'll just call this demo. I'm going to say this can be used an unlimited number of times, and 90. I'll just take the defaults there. And we're going to go ahead and create that. Now, once this is displayed, you can only ever get that one single time. So when I close this, I'll never be able to get that value again. So I'm just going to leave that up for a second. And I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to grab this value right here. All right, just up to there. Okay. Now, this is what a login link looks like if it came from our test environment. Okay. With the token after it. Okay, so we're just going to imagine that this is what's behind the button, and when you see the submit a photo button. Okay, so let's go grab that link here. Boom. I grab this and put it in there. Okay, and because we've created that in the application knows that this link goes with this particular account, which by the way is called. Oh, let me close this. I've got that now. This weird name, Loot plus Office and Service. So let's go ahead and take a look and see if we get logged in. Okay, so that passes to the application, and we can see that it is authenticated. Because this is a service account, there's only a lot of the screen has been removed, but so don't worry about that. But you can see that we have been authenticated with the application. So that's a sort of manual creation of an email link. Okay, that's not something you should probably need to do, but I wanted to show you that because I wanted to talk through in a minute what we're going to some of the changes and how they affect SSO. So let's jump over here to cardholder groups really quick and to show how we can configure these. So we'll just pull up the default group, and you'll see there's in this section here we've got 4 new settings, two for email links and 2 for API links. How long, how many times they can be used, and how long the link will live. Okay, the default for email links is an unlimited amount of time, and they'll live for 90 days. For API links, okay, and an API link is when you request a login link for a person through the API from the API directly, then it returns a login link that looks identical to a login link that would go into an email. But the expectation is that if you're requesting it through the API, you're probably going to use it immediately, and you're probably only going to use it one time. So we give it a much shorter duration, only 1 hour for that link to live, and which of course, if you wanted, you can configure this down to 1 minute, and it can only be used a single time by default. Right? You can change these. These are all fully configurable. Okay, and so let's take a look at how that affects single sign-on real quick. So I'm going to open up a new tab here. I'm going to pop open the DevTools. Like I said, it's getting a little technical, but don't worry, I'm right here with you. We'll get through this. So let's clear out. This is a log of all the communications between this browser and various servers, and we are going to go to our Test SSO connector. I'm already authenticated with SSO, so I should get logged into the application immediately, and I did. Okay, we've got all these requests that just happened, which is would be an interesting subject for a different video, but we don't have time for all that today. We are concerned with just one request in particular, this one. All right, and you'll notice this is a redirect where the SSO connector is redirecting us to this URL, right? Interesting. Take a look at that. That looks exactly like a login link from an email, and it is exactly like that. So we're going to copy that value, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it up here and show you that it only works one time. It worked the time that it logged me in, right here. It worked when we logged in here, and then because that's already been used once, it can no longer be used again. So, and they get this error message that says, "Hey, listen, you tried to use a login link that's already been used." So that's a great new security feature and something that will just enhances the security of the application some of our customers have already asked for. So that's the default configuration, and that's how that'll work. And that's if you were to go in and change some of these configurations. I would be, again, with email links, I would be a little hesitant to put limits on them, or certainly to put very low limits like one or a small number of uses, because you might end up with a lot more card holders contacting the card office saying, hey, listen, the link is not working. It's saying it's already been used, because maybe they clicked the link already and maybe they didn't have their hair brushed or something. So just fair warning, something to think about there before you start changing those. All right, so let's swing back over here to the presentation. We've talked about login links. We talked about how the SSO and email interact with those login links and pass those the persistent access tokens as part of the link to the app, and then the app pulls that token part off of the link and sends it to the API, and then it's able to communicate back and forth with the API fully authenticated. So that just leaves the bottom part of our diagram here, which are API integrations. So these are folks that don't have a user interface. They're just talking directly to the API. A great example is the downloader, right? That's checking for photos in a specific status and then downloading those photos and updating them to mark them as downloaded in the application. Well, it needs to talk to the API to do that, okay? So let's take a look at some of the things that are necessary to do that. Okay, so for the downloader and the importer, there's very little that you need to do. In fact, it's largely covered in the, let me just click this link here, largely covered in the documentation already. So it shows, right here how to, configure the access token. There's even a video right here, which walks you through the actual creation of the persistent access token and what you need to do there. So I'm not going to go into that too much. It's very straightforward. But I am going to talk about custom API integrations, right? This is the point where if you don't have a custom API integration, you can just kind of fast forward through this part. There's really not much more in this video that's useful to you. But if you are using a custom API integration, then you definitely want to check out the authentication section in the developer's guide to see how you can use the persistent access tokens, right? Basically, you're going to what you're trying to get is a session token, and like I said before, our underlying framework calls them authentication tokens, and so that's what the endpoint is called. And you just post the persistent access token here in the body of a post request to the authentication token endpoint, and it will return an authentication token to you, aka a session token, right there. And then this value can be used for all of your other API requests in the application. So what's important here is that you need to manually create a persistent access token. We just gave an example of that a minute ago, where we were on our person and or on our service account, and we created a persistent access token, right, so that we could log in. So you just create one here. We already have one here called downloader, right? You probably want to change the expiration date to maybe a year, maybe 6 months, depending on what your security policies are. Then one of the other nice things about this is if you ever are concerned that a token has been compromised, or if you're just rotating tokens, it's very easy to individually deprovision these tokens. Like, for instance, I just recorded a video and it included this demo token in it. Well, I want to go ahead and deprovision that now, so I know that demo token can never be used again. That is those are some of the things you can do. So you create the persistent access token manually, and then we need to get the session token by sending the persistent access token. We talked about that. That's described right here, exactly how to do that. You get that session token back, and then you need to everything else after that. You just use the session token the way you've always used the session token. But But the last thing that you need to do is you need to handle session token expiration, because those session tokens are going to expire in 12 hours, right? So in less time than that, you need to, or if you send a request and you get a 401 back saying, hey, you're not authenticated, or you start getting 403s back saying, because actually I think what you get back is a 401. Sorry, sorry for the confusion there. But you start getting 401s back, then you need to re-log in and refresh that session. So if you do need a long-lived session token, actually let's talk about this real quick. Okay, what we have done already before even deploying this is we've extended the life of all of the current session tokens for service accounts. So, and we've extended the life of those essentially indefinitely. So you don't need to make a change right away to how you're already working, as long as, because your current session tokens will continue to remain valid. However, if you're building a new integration, or if you want to take advantage of this, I definitely recommend reworking the authentication part of any custom integrations to support authentication tokens. But if you're setting up a new integration, you'll definitely need to do that. If you do run into a situation where for whatever reason you need a session token and you need it to live longer than 12 hours, just reach out to us at support. We'll create one for you, and we'll give it a long live date and pass that on back to you. But again, ultimately, we want all of our API clients to use the new authentication scheme. So if you got any questions, reach out to us at support@onlinephotosubmission.com, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.